speaking notes. I declare the fourth-part session of the ordinary 2022 session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe open. Madam Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General, Madam Secretary General of the Assembly, ambassadors, members of the Assembly, all those who are following our meeting online or at the public gallery, may I welcome you all at the beginning of this fourth-part session. Please allow me to make some opening remarks before starting our proceedings. I welcome you all in this hemicycle, the same place where 30 years ago, Britain's wise, beloved, and now late Queen Elizabeth praised all the efforts to bring the European family together. Words of wisdom. She referred to Winston Churchill, who was amongst the first to propose to set up a Council of Europe to overcome the horrors of the World War and formed the first assembly in Strasbourg here in 1949. Also in this very hemicycle, it was Mikhail Gorbachev in 1989 who called for a common European house, marking therewith finally the beginning of the end of the Cold War and the brutal divide of our continent. We pay respect to both these heads of state who passed away so recently for their role in bringing Europe together in line with our Statute of the Council of Europe. May I especially welcome the members of the Ukrainian delegation as committed ambassadors of the citizens of Ukraine who suffer day after day from the terrible Russian war of aggression. So far, tens of thousands have been killed or wounded. Millions had to leave their homes and even their country. A massive, respectless destruction is ongoing, and even nuclear threats have now become part of the Russian aggression. Earlier this morning, as you know, the whole of Ukraine woke up under sirens and another series of barbaric Russian strikes on residential areas and civilian infrastructure took place, targeting even the historic center of Kiev, the cities of Zaporizhzhia, Dnipro, Odessa, Lviv, Zhytomyr, and many others. Many missiles were launched against Ukraine, and this unforgivable, indiscriminatory attack is still going on at the moment that we are meeting here. People driving or going to work, accompanying their children to school or kindergartens in the early hours of this morning have been killed, have been injured, and are in despair. This comes in addition to the horrific attacks on the residential buildings in the city of Zaporizhzhia over the weekend that took the lives of more than 50 innocent civilians. Dear colleagues, these atrocities that deliberately and manifestly target non-military targets and aim to terrorize innocent people cannot be ignored and cannot be justified. Together with the Secretary General and the Chair of the Committee of Ministers, we will issue in a few minutes a statement in which we make it very clear that this is again a brutal violation of international law for which some people, some authorities will be held accountable. May I, because of the fact that this war should never become a normality and that we have to realize that so many people suffer the effects of this brutal war of aggression against our member state of Ukraine, may I call for a moment of silence for all the victims of this war that should never have started and must end as soon as possible. Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, the Council of Europe supports the brave struggle of the people of Ukraine to protect, uphold and regain national sovereignty and territorial integrity of their country and our member state. We, as the Council of Europe, responded immediately, decisively and with impressive unanimity to the Russian Federation's blatant violation of the very basic principles of international law and our statute by suspending and then expelling it from the Council of Europe. A sad but necessary decision welcomed by many in Europe and seen as an example by many. Since then, we have sent our missions to Ukraine, are preparing several reports and are offering our good services whenever and wherever needed. I want to thank Madam Maria Mazentseva and her delegation for their excellent cooperation, and I wish them strength again in these most difficult hours and days. Dear colleagues, I'm most grateful that the President of Ukraine, Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky, has accepted my invitation to update our Assembly later this week and exchange views with our Assembly on how to further help Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Dear colleagues, the Russian war of aggression is profoundly challenging the European and global multilateral architecture, which was built after the end of the Second World War and the Cold War. As we are part and parcel of that multilateral architecture, it is now time, according to our Assembly, to rethink our specific role and to reconfirm our commitment to strengthen effective multilateralism and halt the resurrection of brutal unilateralism, which has caused so much harm to our continent in the recent past. Russia's unilateral aggression has led to the whole series of multilateral reactions. Last week in Prague, heads of state and government of most European states came together to show European unity in favor of Ukraine's national sovereignty and territorial integrity and against Russia's violation of international law. I very much welcome their commitment. In that same week, a high-level expert group instigated by our Secretary General at the request of the Committee of Ministers formulated 30 clear proposals on how to strengthen the role of the Council of Europe in a future European multilateral architecture. Our Assembly itself will add its own proposals on the basis of the report of our colleague Fiona O'Loughlin, which is now under preparation in the Political Affairs Committee. For tomorrow, I have convened a meeting of the Joint Committee of the Assembly and the Committee of Ministers. There we will discuss the need to convoke at the earliest possible opportunity a fourth summit of heads of state and government of all our 46 member states to decide on the future role of the Council of Europe as Europe's oldest and broadest treaty-based political community in the future multilateral architecture to protect peace and promote prosperity for all European citizens on the basis of the respect for the rule of law, human rights and democracy. May I in this respect quote the words of the chair of our Committee of Ministers, Irish Foreign Affairs Minister Simon Coveney, if not now, when then? And I very much agree with him, and I'm sure that the Secretary General agrees as well. I wish to use this occasion to thank her, Madam Secretary General, and the Irish Presidency of the Committee of Ministers for their tremendous efforts in promoting the organization of the summit and to ensure that its agenda will focus on the most relevant issues. On Wednesday morning, the Irish Minister for European Affairs, Mr. Thomas Byrne, will update us on the most recent developments and answer our questions. And on Tuesday, our Secretary General will do the same, I expect. I would like to inform you that we can be most satisfied with the excellent cooperation between the Committee of Ministers and our Assembly. The synergies between the two statutory bodies of the Council of Europe have increased considerably in line with the objectives we defined in the report on the role and mission of the Council of Europe adopted back in 2019 and our report on the strategic priorities for the Council of Europe, which we adopted here last year after we had read the proposals of our Secretary General in this respect. Let me use this opportunity to warmly congratulate Madam Siofra O'Leary, judge in respect of Ireland, on her recent election as the new president of our Court of Human Rights, the first ever female president. We wish her all the wisdom she needs in this challenging position, and we thank President Spano for the good work that he has delivered. Chers collègues, de nombreux défis importants en Europe requièrent toute notre attention cette semaine, parmi lesquels la récente et très inquiétante intensification des hostilités entre l'Arménie et l'Azerbaïdjan, qui a fait de nouvelles victimes des deux côtés. J'invite instamment les deux pays à redoubler d'efforts pour trouver une solution pacifique, durable au conflit dont les effets sur la vie de millions de personnes dans la région de Caucase du Sud sont si négatifs. J'appelle les parlementaires arméniens et azerbaïdjanais à utiliser cette assemblée comme une tribune leur offrant la possibilité de discuter des questions les plus difficiles et d'établir un véritable dialogue pour tenter de surmonter les désaccords. Encore une fois, s'il n'est pas maintenant, quand? D'autres questions urgentes en Europe sont à l'ordre du jour de cette semaine. Les perspectives européennes pour les Balkans occidentaux, un débat conjoint sur la migration et l'asile, la lutte contre l'islamophobie, l'élimination de la discrimination à l'égard des femmes dans le monde du sport et les conséquences du Brexit pour les droits humains en Irlande. Nous débattrons aussi de rapports importants sur le respect des obligations et des engagements de nos États membres, la Turquie, la Hongrie et la Roumanie. Et nous accueillerons dans cet hémicycle le président de la Confédération suisse, M. Ignacio Cassis, le président d'Irlande, M. Michael Higgins, et le Premier ministre de l'Albanie, M. Edi Rama. J'attends avec intérêt leurs contributions et les échanges qu'ils auront avec nous. Chers collègues, Octobre Rose est consacré à la campagne de sensibilisation au cancer du sein. Nous nous y associerons à travers plusieurs événements cette semaine, au cours desquels vous êtes invités à manifester votre solidarité. Des auditions ont été organisées. Vous trouverez devant l'hémicycle un stand qui distribue des rubans roses et le palais sera illuminé en rose ce soir. Chers collègues, en ce 10 octobre, le monde entier célèbre la journée mondiale contre la peine de mort. Les Nations Unies appellent à une abolition mondiale. Au Conseil de l'Europe, cette peine est déjà interdite depuis plus de 20 ans. Résultat impressionnant parmi d'autres de multilatéralisme efficace en faveur de la paix et du progrès. Nous soutenons naturellement l'appel lancé par la Nation Unie. Chers collègues, cette session est la première pour un grand nombre d'entre vous, auxquels je souhaite chaleureusement la bienvenue. It will also be, dear colleagues, the very last session of our longest-serving member, Mr. Boris Silevich, sitting here in front of me, who has served this Assembly with so much passion, dedication, wisdom, and commitment ever since, yes, I pronounce it well, 1999. That is a century ago, dear Boris. Dear Boris, it has been a true pleasure and a great honor to work with you for so long. It will be difficult to imagine this hemicycle and this assembly without you. But as an honorary member, you probably will get that title, I can tell you, you will always be welcome in our home of democracy. Normally, we just say goodbye, but for our longest standing member, I think I have to give you flowers, and thank you so much, Boris, for all the good work done. So for all of you who did not yet serve 23 years in this assembly, Boris is the proof that it's doable and that you can do it in a way that we all appreciate it. Dear colleagues, may I inform you that at 12:30, the Vatslav Havel Prize Award ceremony will be held in this hemicycle, where the choice will be made out of the 3 remarkable nominees for our annual Human Rights Prize. The nominees are Mr. Vladimir Kara-Murza, coming from the Russian Federation, the Rainbow Coalition, the Invalid Campaign for the LGBTQIA+ rights from Hungary, and the Ukraine 5 AM Coalition. You are all invited to stay in the hemicycle then to show respect to all these very brave defenders of human rights. But for now, let us start our work. And before we start to proceed to debate our agenda, I would like to give the floor for a personal statement to Mr. Ian Littlegranger. Ian, you have the floor.
Mr. President, thank you. I should keep you very briefly. Sir, can I thank you, Despina, the staff of the Council of Europe, and members throughout the Council of Europe for their kindness that they showed with their words over the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. We were quite overwhelmed by how many of you sent messages of goodwill to the United Kingdom and to individual members of the Council of Europe. Her Majesty was an icon, and as Tini said, she's been here on many occasions to do her work. But I just wanted to thank you and your countries for your kindness over what was a little difficult period for the United Kingdom, and we're all very grateful for your thoughts, your best wishes, and to you, Mr. President, for your thoughts and wishes as well. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Littlegranger, for this personal statement, and also thanks to all our colleagues who did send their condolences to someone who was even longer reigning than Boris Silovich was serving this assembly. That is also possible. First item on the agenda is the examination of credentials of new members. The names of the representatives and substitutes are in document 15627. If no credentials are challenged, the credentials will be ratified. Is there any challenge? I do not see so. The credentials are ratified, and I'll welcome our new colleagues. There's a lot of work to do, so be aware, and if you want to stay here for 23 years, you have to become relevant, and again, that is possible and doable. We now come to the election of a vice president in respect of France. The candidate from the French delegation is Monsieur Bertrand Bouilly. If there is no request for a vote, Monsieur Bouilly will be declared elected. I do not see any request for a vote, so Mr. Bouilly is elected as the Vice President of the Assembly, and I congratulate him on his election. Our next business is to consider the changes proposed in the membership of committees. These are set out in documents Commissions 2022-07 and Addendum. Are the proposed changes in the membership of the Assembly committees agreed to? They are. Then, before we examine the draft agenda of this week, the Assembly needs to consider requests for debates under urgent and current affairs procedures. The Bureau has received the following: a request under the urgent procedure for a debate on recent outrageous and inhuman activities of the Russian Federation, requested by Mr. Zingers and 29 other members of the Assembly. A request under urgent procedure for a debate on political consequences of the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine, requested by the 5 political groups. A request for a current affairs debate on the military hostilities between Armenia and Azerbaijan, requested by the Monitoring Committee. A request for a current affairs debate on the military hostilities between Azerbaijan and Armenia, including strikes against settlements and civilian infrastructures, requested by the 5 political groups, and a request for a current affairs debate on threatened bans on pride events in Council of Europe member states, requested by Mr. Lux and 90 other members of the Assembly. Dear colleagues, at its meeting this morning, the Bureau took note of the request for urgent debate and current affairs debate and agreed to support the debates on a debate under urgent procedure on political consequences of the Russian Federation aggression against Ukraine, on the report being prepared in the Political Affairs Committee by Mr. Zingris, which will cover all relevant issues, including this morning's attacks. B, a current affairs debate on military hostilities between Azerbaijan and Armenia, including strikes against settlements and civilian infrastructures. And C, a current affairs debate on threatened bans on pride events in the Council of Europe member states. We will start by considering the request for the urgent debate. Does the Assembly agree with the Bureau's recommendation to hold an urgent debate on political consequences on the Russian Federation aggression against Ukraine during this part session? I do not see an objection, so we do it that way. We will now consider the request for current affairs debate. Does the Assembly agree to the Bureau's recommendation to hold current affairs debates on military hostilities between Azerbaijan and Armenia, including strikes against settlements and civilian infrastructures, and on threatened bans on pride events in the Council of Europe member states during this part session? I do not see objections, so the Bureau's recommendation is accepted and these requests for current affairs debates are therefore approved. The Bureau proposes that the lead speaker for the current affairs debate on military hostilities between Azerbaijan and Armenia, including strikes against settlements and civilian infrastructures, will be Mr. Paul Gavin. And for the debate on threatened bans on pride events in the Council of Europe member states will be Mr. Max Lux. I do not see any objection. Then we will now, let's see, I have to look carefully in my file. Which page, Valerie?
17.
I'm now on page 17. Once in a while I invent something myself, but the rest is well prepared by our staff. The next item on our business of the agenda for the 4th part session is the adoption of the agenda. The draft agenda submitted for the Assembly's approval was brought up to date this morning by the Bureau. I remind members that we just have agreed to have an urgent affairs debate and 2 current affairs debates as set out in the draft before you. The Bureau's proposal is to hold the urgent debate on Thursday morning, the debate on Russia's aggression, after the address of the President of Ukraine, Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky. The Bureau's proposal is to hold the current affairs debate on military hostilities between Azerbaijan and Armenia, including strikes against settlements and civilian infrastructures, this afternoon, after the address from the President of the Swiss Federation. If this is agreed, the speakers list for this debate will be open as soon as possible and will be closed at 1:30 p.m. Please, can members wishing to speak in this debate ensure that they are registered before 1:30 p.m. The Bureau's proposal is to hold the current affairs debate on threatened bans on pride events in Council of Europe member states on Thursday afternoon as the first item of business. Then I think we have dealt with the agenda, if there are no objections. So the next item on the agenda is the debate on the progress report of the Bureau and the Standing Committee. You'll find in document 15626 and addendum. The debate must conclude at 12:30 p.m. I will therefore interrupt the list of speakers at around 12:20. I remind members the speaking time is 3 minutes. In the debate, I call Mr. Frank Schwabe to present the progress report on behalf of Madam Céline Seyeg-Beuke, the rapporteur. Frank, you have 7 minutes. You have the floor.
Hopefully, yes.
Dear Boris Cilevic, may I join the best wishes and thanks from the President. Dear Mr. President, dear colleagues, and dear brave people of Ukraine who have to suffer a lot in these minutes while we are sitting here. And this, that the Ukrainians are suffering and the Russian aggression against Ukraine, this was a reason why we found, let's say, courage to say we need to renew the basis maybe of this organization, and we want to go for a fourth summit. And we are preparing this fourth summit. The both statutory organs of the organization, the Committee of Ministers and the Parliamentary Assembly. The Secretary General set up a high-level reflection group on this fourth summit, and we organized a dialogue between both organs on this subject. The President mentioned that we will meet tomorrow and to discuss it. So, on the 24th of June, the Bureau decided to set up an ad hoc committee to contribute to the report of this fourth summit as a renewed, improved and reinforced Council of Europe, being prepared by the Committee on Political Affairs and Democracy. On the 11th of September, there was a first meeting in Paris. We had a statement by Mr. Venizelos, rapporteur of the high-level reflection group on the fourth summit of heads of state and government of the Council of Europe, as well as by our rapporteur, Mrs. Fiona O'Loughlin from Ireland, from ALDE, with the report, a fourth summit for a renewed, improved and reinforced Council of Europe. Because, for sure, we welcome this kind of interaction between the ad hoc committee and the rapporteur, and we will have the next meeting on the 24th of November in Reykjavik. Ich will es vielleicht auf Deutsch sagen, weil es mir dann doch, wenn ich es emotional ausdrücke, entsprechend leichter fällt. Ich finde, wir müssen uns klar sein, dass diese Organisation, und so waren auch die Diskussionen der letzten Tage und Wochen, am Scheideweg steht. Menschenrechte allgemein stehen weltweit am Scheideweg, der Multilateralismus steht am Scheideweg und die Handlungsfähigkeit eines Vereinigten Europas. Und in unserer Organisation im Europarat kristallisiert sich diese Frage. Und deswegen kann der 4. Gipfel ein Aufbruch sein, zu Neuem, sich zu stärken. Aber es kann auch, das müssen wir uns klar machen, auch der Beginn sein, der Auftakt zu einer Bedeutungslosigkeit dieser Organisation, weil unsere Mitgliedstaaten diese Organisation nicht mehr wertschätzen und vielleicht auch andere Organisationen anderes planen. Und wir diskutieren vielfach über die europäische politische Gemeinschaft. Ich weiß immer nicht, ob dem Präsidenten Frankreichs als Initiator dieses Prozesses und als Host Country für diese Organisation das so klar ist und ob allen europäischen Institutionen der Europäischen Union so klar ist, dass es eben keine Doppelung geben darf, sondern dass am Ende all das, was an Initiativen stattfindet, auch miteinander harmonieren muss. Aber wir können uns beschweren über diese Initiative zu einer europäischen politischen Gemeinschaft oder nicht. Sie ist jedenfalls Realität und wir müssen entsprechend damit umgehen. Und deswegen ist es für uns eine große Herausforderung. So, jetzt können wir über die Reflexionsgruppe diskutieren und über die Zusammensetzung der Reflexionsgruppe und über die Ergebnisse. Es gibt viele, die sagen, das, was dort an Ergebnissen jetzt publiziert wurde, ist interessant und wir danken dafür, aber es ist in der Substanz noch zu wenig. Wir müssen mehr Substanz bringen, aber dann ist es ja an uns, das entsprechend zu tun, weil wir machen den Unterschied. Wir machen auch den Unterschied zu allen Ideen von 44 Staaten, sich in Prag zu treffen, also einer europäischen politischen Gemeinschaft. Weil wir sind eine parlamentarische Versammlung. Wir haben die Stärke von 46 Parlamenten, die wir entsprechend einbringen können. Es ist an uns, uns in diesen Prozess entsprechend einzubringen. Und wir brauchen wirklich eine neue politische Ebene, auf die wir diesen Europarat entsprechend bringen. Das heißt, es ist fundamental, es ist nicht etwas, was wir uns wünschen, sondern es ist fundamental und muss Ergebnis eines 4. Gipfels sein, dass die EU der Europäischen Menschenrechtskonvention beitritt. Wir müssen uns angesichts der Schrecken in der Ukraine auch des heutigen Tages klar werden, wie soll denn eigentlich es aussehen, wenn wir schwerste Menschenrechtsverbrechen ahnden wollen. Wir können nicht ewig über die Frage eines Tribunals reden, sondern wir müssen Ergebnisse bringen. Ob es am Ende unter dem Dach der Vereinten Nationen ist oder angelehnt an den Europarat, weiß ich gar nicht, aber wir brauchen Ergebnisse. Wir können nicht ewig darüber diskutieren und wir müssen prozedural klären, wie wir dieses große Europa des Europarats schaffen wollen, inklusive der Teile von Ländern, die heute nicht dabei sein können, weil sie eben autoritär regiert werden und nicht demokratisch sind wie Belarus und Russland. Und wir müssen eben uns auch klar sein, wie ist denn die Konsequenz, wenn Mitgliedstaaten fundamentale Gerichtsurteile nicht achten. Dann kann es nicht bei einer Warnung bleiben, sondern wer hier im Kern Urteile des Gerichtshofs nicht respektiert, kann am Ende auch nicht Mitglied dieser Organisation sein. Ich glaube, dieses Signal muss ausgehen am Ende von Reykjavik. Die Konferenz, so habe ich gelernt, ist noch nicht beschlossen, wird hoffentlich in den nächsten Tagen beschlossen vom Ministerkomitee, soll am 16. oder 17. Mai möglicherweise in Reykjavik stattfinden. Ich finde, wir müssen dabei sein. Ich weiß nicht, wie wir das organisieren, ob wir das mit Schiffen, Flugzeugen oder Ähnlichem machen, aber ich finde, wir dürfen nicht nur mit Ideen dabei sein, sondern ich finde, wir müssen auch physisch mit dabei sein. Wir müssen deutlich machen, das ist eben der Unterschied dieses Europarats zu allem anderen. Wir haben eben diesen zweiten starken Teil und das ist die Parlamentarische Versammlung und wir sind selbstbewusst, wir werden entsprechend gebraucht in diesem Prozess. Ich will 2 Dinge noch zum Ende sagen. Das eine ist die Frage von Wahlbeobachtungen. Wir haben 2 Wahlbeobachtungen gehabt in Bosnien-Herzegowina und in Bulgarien. Die werden diskutiert im Standing Committee in Reykjavik im November. And a last question, and I welcome this very much, and it was a unanimous decision at the end in the Bureau, is that all those who are here in the assembly, who have the right to sit, should have the right to speak. And this concerns the country of Kosovo. The Kosovarian delegation is here with us. It's good that they have the opportunity to speak in the debate about Balkan, but not just now, in the future as well. I think this is a very good signal for a unified Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schwabe, for presenting the progress report. Now I open the debate. We first are going to listen to the 5 speakers on behalf of political groups. And our first speaker on behalf of the group of the Socialists, Democrats and Greens is Mr. Titus Kolaratian from Romania. Titus, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I would like first of all to thank the rapporteur of the Assembly and, of course, the leader of the Socialist Group, Frank Schwabe, for introducing a very well-structured report, progress report. We share the conclusions. On behalf of the Socialist Group, I will focus specifically on 2 items, the 4th summit and the new European political community. First of all, on the 4th summit, the summit, it is about the tragedy generated by the Russian aggression against Ukraine. But beyond that, it is, in essence, the issue of promoting now the idea, the vision of a summit that should give clear, substantial solutions to serious challenges against the rule-based international organization, against multilateralism and international law, which is opposed to the unilateral actions based on the abusive, illegal use of force. Simultaneously, we saw this new initiative, the European Political Community, a political community which is proposed, and we saw already a first meeting, summit in Prague that took place very recently, a political initiative that on one side can and should have some political positive inputs and consequences, because a political dialogue within such a fora can be and should be a positive one. But on the other side, this initiative that raises serious questions. And we see, and many saw, a risk of diminishing the role, the scope, and competencies of the Council of Europe, possible duplications of some of our competencies. Some serious other questions were raised. We saw only 43 European states out of 46, it's our members, that attended and were invited to the Prague conference. That might be a sign of a Europe with different speeds, and this is unacceptable. We saw also a political process that generated some other serious questions. Some are considering as being a risk of being a substitute for the European accession process, and this cannot be accepted. Also, we already heard some political voices in European states that promoted a generous vision. We agreed at the level of principle to stop the war, to stop the loss of lives, but a vision which is accompanied by a so-called pragmatic approach, vision, that can be done through political negotiations and with concessions and some loss of territories by Ukraine. And this is unacceptable. Why? Because that will imply a pragmatic acceptance of the violation of fundamental principles of international law, territorial integrity, sovereignty, peaceful settlement of the disputes. We cannot accept as an international organization such a thing. So we understand now why it is important such a summit that should promote substantial solutions sooner than later, and definitely the most important thing is to promote the vision of an international court to sanction the crime of aggression, because this is the essence of the subject. Pace should be present, as the rapporteur mentioned, because Council of Europe, it doesn't mean only presidents and governments. First of all, that means nations. Their political parliamentary representations and the Parliamentary Assembly. So we need the political management of this process. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I ask colleagues to stick to the 3 minutes because we are in a time problem. Next speaker is Alexander Pojci on behalf of the group of the European People's Party. Alexander, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais commencer par Boris Tchilevitch. Boris, vous avez écouté des bonnes choses de la part du chef des socialistes. Je vais dire autant de la part du chef de PPE. On n'est pas toujours d'accord, mais votre travail, vraiment, c'est spectaculaire et vraiment, tous mes félicitations. Quatrième sommet, moi, je voudrais seulement dire une chose. Beaucoup parmi nous s'inquiètent sérieusement pour 2 choses. Est-ce qu'on va vraiment avoir l'impact sur notre organisation? Est-ce que ça va être quelque chose qui va peut-être secouer l'organisation et les pays membres, ou pas grand-chose? La deuxième chose, et c'est exprimé par beaucoup de collègues, la manque visible de notre participation. Je parle de l'ensemble de notre Assemblée. Parlons des choses qui se sont passées aujourd'hui. L'attaque de la Fédération russe contre les civils, contre les centres énergétiques, contre les bâtiments d'habitation. Ça montre visiblement que tous les Chamberlains de notre époque se sont complètement trompés en analysant qu'on peut apaiser la Russie, l'appétit de la Russie. Nous devons suivre notre propre rapport concernant la création d'un tribunal ad hoc pour juger ceux qui ont donné les ordres pour cette agression. on peut se demander, est-ce que la Russie ne devient pas un pays terroriste? Mais en même temps, nous ne devrions pas perdre de vue les menaces qui encombrent Caucasus, où deux nations se lèvent une contre l'autre. Nous devons envoyer un message très fort que nous n'allons pas tolérer la situation où certains pays utilisent la situation où le monde est concentré sur la guerre d'Ukraine pour s'attaquer contre des autres pays. Et du même, nous devons aussi envoyer un signal très fort à la Turquie, qui envoie des menaces dans une période très délicate où nous devrions être vraiment très prudents avec toutes les menaces contre nos voisins. Merci beaucoup.
Merci à vous, Alexander. Now I call in the debate Mr. Ian Littlegranger on behalf of the European Conservatives. Ian, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think this is an interesting time to be in the Council of Europe. Today, 100 missiles, I'm told, have hit Ukraine. This is a time that we must stand up and be counted. If we want to make progress, which is what we're talking about, and I've heard what Alex said and Frank and other people, this is the time that we have to show our mettle. This is the first time since the Second World War we've gone back into a European war, and therefore the time has come. And I've been reading through the report of the High-Level Reflection Group of the Council of Europe, a report which I would recommend colleagues to look at. There are 30 recommendations. I will say, Mr. President, a lot of this I think is management speak, as we'd say in English. In other words, you'd have got it from a very good company that written it. Surely we should concentrate on our core ability, which is the defence of democracy. That is what we were set up to do. That is what we should still be doing. To defend democracy, this summit must show that we have a place in the world and what our place in the world is. No organisation has a right to exist. You have to actually earn that right to do what you want to. What we did in 1946 is really what we're still doing. That is the right attitude, but it's being diluted, it's being watered down. We must do more. This report is only good as far as it goes, colleagues. But the question I have for you, if we want to make progress, is what is this organisation going to look like? Do we do too many reports? Do we monitor elections in the wrong way? Are we out of touch with the reality of what we do? How many reports that you've ever done yourselves or been part of have actually made any impact at all anywhere across the nations of the Council of Europe? I would suggest very, very few. I would also argue that the way that we present ourselves is insular. We look at ourselves, we sit here and we look at ourselves. We've got to be much more proactive. There are organisations within this organisation I've never come across. I asked for a list of them. It's quite remarkable. And they're doing a lot of good stuff, but we don't sell ourselves. The UN does very well. The Commonwealth, which is part of the United Kingdom, does very well. The OECD does very well. NATO, PA, very well, which is the parliamentary side of NATO. There are lots of other organisations in Africa, Australasia, right across the world, that show themselves. We don't. And to me, if we're going to make progress, that progress has to be what we are going to look like for the next 50 to 60 years of this organisation. And I would ask you, Mr. President, when we have the high-level summit, let's discuss openly really what matters to us as parliamentarians in this organisation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ian. Next in the debate, I call Mr. Julian Bulay on behalf of the group of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats in Europe. Julian?
Thank you so much, President. Dear colleagues, since our latest plenary, as we all know, the status quo in Europe has changed only slightly and not to the better. The today's missile attack in Kiev and other cities, the Russian annexation of Ukraine territories under fake referendums, in fact, under constant shelling of the neighborhoods, and with most of the population in refuge, is a blatant attack of aggression and against international law. And for that, those responsible should and will be brought to justice. The energy blackmailing from the part of Russia, another form of escalating aggression in Europe, should not make us waver. We, as Europeans, should not give up to it. It should be an opportunity for Europe to reform the energy sector, something the long-dated climate situation has requested for a long time. Greece, Portugal, France, Italy, Spain, the whole Mediterranean coast was deeply affected by devastating fires this summer, and with the current rhythm of climate change, the worst is yet to come. The current moment is also an opportunity for the definition of the new generation of rights, something that this Assembly has demanded this for a long time, and we should stress it again and again. There cannot be a full enjoyment of human rights without a safe and sustainable environment. Almost exactly 1 year ago, we voted unanimously to support the recognition of the right to live in a healthy environment as a human right. This is even more stringent today. As from this part session, the members of the delegation of the Assembly of Kosovo should have the right to speak in the plenary as well in the standing committee meetings without the right to vote. Your voice, I'm sure, will enrich our debates, dear colleagues from Kosovo. Mirseven. The recent events in the South Caucasus remind us of the need to work together in order to achieve peace through dialogue and negotiations, not through the force of arms. And peace should be the immediate aim of the South Caucasus through sitting at the same table and with the help of us all, the international community. The Iranian case shows us that great changes for more rights, more freedom, and more democracy can be done by the most fragile of us, and that people are ready to risk their lives for these not ideals, but realities. So let me now salute the 2 new ratifications of the Istanbul Convention from east to west after the Republic of Moldova at the beginning of 2022. Ukraine and the United Kingdom joined this year the larger and greater community pledging to safeguard the well-being of humans. Congratulations to both Ukraine and the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. And now the last speaker in the debate will be Mr. André Hunko on behalf of the Unified European Left. André, you have the floor.
Herr Präsident, ich möchte auch 3 Themen ansprechen. Wir haben heute vorhin der Opfer gedacht, die jetzt durch die neuen Angriffe auf Kiew und viele andere ukrainische Städte zu beklagen sind. Wir sehen eine weitere Eskalation dieses Krieges, und es ist richtig natürlich, dass wir der Opfer gedenken. Es ist richtig auch, dass wir die Taten verurteilen und die Angriffe Russlands verurteilen, wie wir das häufig gemacht haben. Aber ich denke auch, dass wir auch Energie da reinsetzen müssen, wie wir aus dieser weiteren Eskalation herauskommen. Wir haben eine offene Debatte gegenwärtig des Einsatzes von Atomwaffen, des möglichen Einsatzes von Atomwaffen in verschiedenen Staaten, auch die Drohung von Russland. Dieser Krieg kann noch weiter eskaliert werden. Deswegen glaube ich, es reicht nicht nur zu gedenken und zu verurteilen, sondern wir müssen auch Anstrengungen übernehmen, wie eine Lösung aussehen könnte und wie es am Ende auch zu Verhandlungen kommen kann. Ein zweites Thema, was ich ansprechen möchte, ist schon viel diskutiert worden, die Europäische Politische Gemeinschaft. Es gab ein Treffen von 44 Staats- und Regierungschefs, ad hoc, ohne Beschluss, ohne sozusagen Grundlage, ein schönes Foto. Und es gibt ein Folgetreffen Anfang Mai, dann in Moldawien voraussichtlich. Und kurz bevor wir unseren Gipfel machen wollen, wo wir immer noch nicht klar sind, wird dieser Gipfel stattfinden und werden auch die Staats- und Regierungschefs dahin kommen. Ich finde, die Proportionen stimmen hier nicht, und ich teile alles, was gesagt wurde. Wir brauchen einen starken Gipfel, wir brauchen ein starkes Signal von dort, und wir brauchen eine parlamentarische Dimension. Der Europarat hat von allen internationalen Organisationen die am entwickelsten parlamentarische Dimension, der verschiedenen Organisationen. Diese europäische politische Gemeinschaft hat gar keine parlamentarische Dimension. Und zum Schluss würde ich gern noch erinnern, wir haben auch öfter schon mal darüber gesprochen, erinnern an das Schicksal von Julian Assange. Am Samstag war in London, ich habe auch daran teilgenommen, eine, wie ich finde, historische Menschenkette um Westminster herum. Julian Assange sitzt seit 3,5 Jahren im Hochsicherheitsgefängnis in Belmarsh, wartet auf seine mögliche Auslieferung, weil er Kriegsverbrechen aufgedeckt hat. Und er untersteht der Europäischen Menschenrechtskonvention, weil es auf europäischem Boden ist. Ich denke, auch hier müssen wir, da darf dieser Fall nicht vergessen werden und dass diese Versammlung öfter schon gefordert hat, zweimal gefordert hat, dass Julian Assange sofort freigelassen wird. Vielen Dank.
Vielen Dank, André. I now have to interrupt the list of speakers. The speeches of the members on the speakers list who have been present during the debate but have not been able to speak may be given to the table office for publication in the official report. I remind colleagues that the texts are to be submitted in typescript electronically if possible, no later than 4 hours after the list of speakers is interrupted. The Bureau has proposed references to committees for ratification by the Assembly. They are set out in document 15626 and addendum number 1. Is there any objection to the proposed references to committees? I do not see any. If there's no objections, they are approved. I now propose that other decisions in the progress report, which you find in document 15626 and addendum 1, be ratified. I do not see any objections, so the progress report is approved. The next item on the agenda of our session is the Vatslav Havel Human Rights Prize Award ceremony. Dear colleagues, honorable guests, I hereby declare open the award ceremony of the Vatslav Havel Human Rights Prize. A warm welcome to this, the 10th edition of an award ceremony of the Vatslav Havel Human Rights Prize, and a special thank to our partners for their cooperation, the Czech government, the Václav Havel Library, and the Carta 77 Foundation, the members of the selection panel whose commitment and dedication are fundamental to uphold the work, legacy and values embodied by Mr. Havel. I wish to use this occasion to mention that our partners will organize on the 12th of October in Prague a traditional conference associated with this prize. It is entitled The Crime and the Punishment, and it will deal with the issues of post-conflict and transformational justice in dealing with human rights violations during conflicts. Dear colleagues, I'm particularly honored to welcome at this 10th ceremony of the Václav Havel Human Rights Prize former presidents of this assembly, Mr. René van der Linden, Mr. Jean-Claude Mignon, Madame Ambra Seur, Mr. Michele Nicoletti, Madame Liliane Maury-Pasquier, and Mr. Rick Daams. As I mentioned, this is the 10th edition of the Václav Havel Prize. Our prize is widely recognized as an important and prestigious award given to truly outstanding people and organizations who dedicate their lives to defending human rights, our core business. On the 10th anniversary of our prize, it should be mentioned that the very first winner of the Václav Havel Prize, Mr. Ales Bialyatsky, was last week awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize together with the memorial in Russia and the Center for Civil Liberties in Ukraine. I would like to offer our sincere congratulations to these three winners and use this opportunity to again urgently call on the authorities of Belarus to release Ales Bialyatsky from prison, to release him immediately. I also recall that another person who received our prestigious prize, Madame Nadia Murad, also received the Nobel Prize. As I said before, we started this meeting to those who are nominated this time. There is a chance. If you get the Vatslav Havel Prize, next step is the Nobel Peace Prize. Now I invite you all to watch a short video on the Václav Havel Human Rights Prize, by which we recognize and honor the work of thousands of individuals and organizations who share our values and goals, the protection of fundamental freedoms and human dignity. We pay our respect to their sacrifices to uphold these values. Please watch with me this video.
10th of May 1990, the President of the Czech and Slovak Federal Republic entered the Assembly chamber of the Council of Europe. It was an emotional parliamentary assembly that welcomed the former political dissident, the figurehead of the Velvet Revolution, who in 1989 brought an end to the communist regime. In his welcoming address, the Assembly President paid tribute to the courage of one of the key figures of the opposition in the Czechoslovak Socialist Republic.